Meanwhile, her campaign is reportedly telling Wall Street donors to donate as soon as possible because they may not be able to once she makes her VP pick. An intriguing new report from Axios this morning notes this. The campaign is citing a financial pay-for-play rule that bars contributions to tickets featuring a sitting governor. That's according to several people familiar with the matter. The report further states that some within the financial industry think they have until Sunday to donate. Should that be the case, it would indicate that two on the reported running mate shortlist, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, would be out of the running because this applies to sitting governors, and there are several who she is considering. The Reverend Al Sharpton is still with us for this hour, we're happy to say, and also joining the discussion is former MSNBC host and contributor to Washington Monthly, Chris Matthews. Chris, we will start with you. With this VP speculation, this report from Axios that suggests that she could be eyeing governors. That could include Governor Wallace of Minnesota, Governor Shapiro of a state you know well, Pennsylvania, among others, Governor Pritzker of Illinois, Governor Beshear of Kentucky. What's your read of the landscape right now?
Well, this morning I was very impressed by Mark Kelly, and that's a good name in Philadelphia, not just because of Grace Kelly, but the whole family. It's a good name. Harris Kelly's a good ticket. He's strong. He can talk. Biden got too old to talk. He wasn't very effective on the stage, on the debate stage. This guy can talk. You can tell it from his manner. He's got a military background. He's a regular guy. I think he's really the one to do it. The important thing is he goes on the offense. He was very good this morning on Good Morning, on Morning Joe. Really good. And I think the fact that he can talk and he will take this fight. The governors are used to being bipartisan. They don't know how to really sell it in a partisan way. This campaign has to be on the offense. If the Democrats go to defense, they can lose. I know they're going to lose, but I'll tell you, they got to stay on offense. They got 100 days to go, almost 100 days. The first 50 days should be entirely attack. And going after Trump and his record. And by the way, I always wondered how Hillary, and I could never figure this out. When she was debating Trump and that guy got behind her, like this big bully in the schoolyard, stood behind her, what could she do? And I've never been able to figure out what she could do. But here's what she could do. You know, what Vice President Harris can do. She says, tell it to my face. Tell it to my face. Turn around on the guy and say, tell that thing to my face. Because that kind of street level, talk to people the way you would with a bully in a schoolyard is key to dealing with Trump. Talk to him like he is a bully. That's how you do it. You're Goliath. He's a Goliath. You're David. Play David. You're not a woman of color. You're the underdog historically. Let's face it. Certainly historically as a woman and a woman of color besides. Make Trump be the big gorilla. Let him be the bad guy, the Goliath in this race. I think it's really important to keep this going. Don't turn to defense. Fracking, right move. Immigration, she's getting in the right direction. I would take that Langford proposal, Senator Langford's proposal, with Mark Kelly and say, look, I'll take it. I'll be a Democrat. I'll take it. I know it's mostly a Republican bill, but I'm going to show some action on the border. I'm going to do it even if Trump is still standing in the way, and then force him to do it again. Stick it to him on his criminal record, on his abuse of women, the whole story, Access Hollywood, never stop, because now Democrats are taking the fight into the arena. They're not using the courts, not some liberal court in New York with Alvin Bragg. They're talking about in the fight itself. If she goes out there and fights as David against Goliath, she'll win.
So, Chris, let's have a follow-up with a geography question, if you will. So much talk is about how a running mate should try to balance a ticket, but also try to expand the map, particularly in a battleground state. But if you look through recent presidential history, Senator McCaskill and I were talking about this earlier, it's actually pretty few and far between where a running mate is selected because that person could put a state in play. Famously, LBJ helped John F. Kennedy win Texas, but usually the running mates come from pretty safely Republican or Democratic states. This time around, there are two. Kelly, who we interviewed earlier today on Morning Joe, Arizona, and then particularly Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Those are big-time battleground states. Pennsylvania, arguably the biggest of all. Do you think that should factor in to what the vice president's decision?
Well, let's talk Pennsylvania. And you got Kanaki. Kanaki knows this stuff, too. You got 67 counties in Pennsylvania. For a Democrat to win, you can win 14 counties. That's Pittsburgh and all the area around Philadelphia. You got to win in the Lehigh Valley. That's the key place. You got to win Wilkes-Barre. You got to win Erie. There's a lot of interesting places you have to win. But I think Kelly can sell because he's a fighter and a talker. I think he or Shapiro would be great. But the fact is they've got to take this again back to Trump. Make it about Trump and J.D. Vance. If you talk about her switching on fracking, what about J.D. Vance? He switched on Trump. He went from the biggest knocker of Trump in the Appalachian vote and all that sociology stuff to being his biggest lover. He's a joke. He's a joke. And not everybody knows it. I think the two Trump kids who picked him apparently must be embarrassed that they told their dad to pick this guy. They should have picked Burgum, who he would have been a good, solid business guy from the Dakotas, and they would have made him Trump more the business guy, more the energy guy. It would have made sense. Are you listening, Donald Trump? You made a mistake by listening to your kids. Pennsylvania is going to be run on fracking, and she's got to deal with the border issue effectively and not just using language, oh, Donald Trump screwed this thing up. No, she's got to say, I'm for it. I will be for the bipartisan bill. I dare Trump to do it now. Keep saying you're not going to do anything because you're not doing anything.
Chris, I agree with you that she must take him on in a David versus Goliath way, and I think a fighter, and as we look at this list, I, too, was impressed with Kelly, but I also think Tim Walz in Minnesota is in line with some of what the vice president did as a senator.
How come we've never heard of him? Reverend, how come I've never heard of the guy?
Let me make
if
my
he's
point.
A big talker, we have never heard a word from this guy.
Well, but I think that when you look at his record with George Floyd and other things, he could be added. I think that Shapiro could be added. I think that any of the list has his assets, but I agree with you that I was impressed with Mark Kelly. How much of it do you think, though, going to your point, is about having a vice presidential candidate that can bring in certain regions or having one that can help with turnout? Because historically, people vote for the president, not the vice president.
Yeah, I've voted all my life, and I've got to tell you, ever since I could vote, and I have been affected by running mates. I remember voting for Humphrey, and Nixon was promising to end the war, and everybody said, well, Nixon's going to end the war because he doesn't care about this war in Vietnam. But Humphrey had the civil rights record going back to 48, and I said, that's really strong for me. And secondly, he had Muskie, a good running mate. I think that running mate has to be tough, and they have to be outspoken. He can't just let the candidate for president, for her to do all the talking. He has to be he has to land a punch in boxing. You know, boxing, you got to land a punch so it shows for a couple days. It can't just be a shot. It's got to be a punch, and it's got to hit for a while. And people got to say, wait a minute, talk to my face, tell that to my face. That's something that those African-American women in that picture we just saw this morning were all loving it because they know what that meant. You got to take the bad guy on, whoever it is. And I think he knows how to land a punch. So I'm looking at guys who can punch and leave a mark on the face. I mean, basically make the guy, like, remember Tricky Dick? You know, once that woman in California called Nixon Tricky Dick, he could never get over it, ever. And I think he's got to be as tough as the vice president. By the way, the vice president is so improved as a candidate. I have never seen it. Maybe it's just the fact that she's taken over. Just 2 weeks ago, people on the right would say, oh, I can't. You think Biden's bad? You should see her. She's terrible. Well, I don't think they're saying that anymore. I think they're saying, my God, what are we up against? I think it's, and by the way, it's a British-style election. It's less than 100 days. This is classic. There are things you can do now really quick. And if you put the focus on Trump, not on her, on Trump, make Trump play defense all the way, all his crimes and awful statements, and it's all on record, it's all on tape. Like, I want there be some form of punishment for women who have abortions. And by the way, if you don't have kids, I want them to be punished too, by the way. I mean, all this stuff's on tape. It's just, if I were her and going into the debate, I'd say every shot I take at Trump, I'm going to make sure there's videotape to back it up and dare the networks not to show the videotape, including Fox. Just show the tape. Let's go to the tape and show what he said himself. If he wasn't convicted of a crime, he admitted it himself. I think you got to be very aggressive. I mean, this is what I grew up in politics. I love it. I think she can win with it. And if she goes on defense, she's making a big mistake. Big mistake.
a British-style election, except, of course, for the money. There have already been multiple millions raised on that side.
Dollars, not pounds.
So who can throw a lot of dollars? Who can throw and take punches? And we mean, of course, politically speaking, not physically speaking. We will know next Tuesday. Chris Matthews, thank you very much.
Rev, let's not do what happens sometimes when Trump is disgusting and racist in his attacks against Fani Willis or Tish James or Tanya Chutkan. We say, well, he hates all women, but he especially hates a black woman who's trying to hold him accountable, right? That feels like letting him get away with something that is for him a trigger. Let's put all of that aside and let's not do that. Let's also put this in the frame of what he sought to do to President Barack Obama with birtherism. This is more than insulting a woman who threatens what he thought would be a landslide, is what his campaign managers told Tim Alberta about 3 weeks ago. This is someone that threatens his grand plan to return to the White House after being humiliated by President Joe Biden, defeating him roundly and soundly. This is probably a warm-up, and I just want to make sure we put it in the right context. This was offensive. This was ignorant. This was graceless. He was a guest there. He was invited by journalists to answer questions, and all he did was malign and smear the vice president of the United States, a woman who is a very, very, very capable opponent against him in this general election.
I think that we must be clear that everything that you said and Karine Jean-Pierre said at the White House and Yamiche said is exactly what he intended to do. Donald Trump accepted this invitation to use that platform to play to his MAGA crowd. And those bigots that will say tonight, he went in there and stood up to those black journalists, stood up and called the vice president someone that is not proud of who she is, played to those few black men that he's trying to get off that he can start this. And I went in there and stood up to them and told them he did what he intended to do. You're right, Nicole. We already know he has serious problems with blacks, period, particularly black women, and don't, God forbid, if you're a black woman, to stand up to him. That's a given. What you have to ask yourself after seeing this performance for almost a half hour is, what did he do it for? He came to do what he did. He came to use them as a backboard to score with the MAGA crowd, to say, I'm one of y'all. I will go to their own conference and do everything but call them the N-word. And I will try and act like their candidate, their hero, this strong black woman they're rallying around. She didn't even say she was black until a little while ago. When did we not know she was black? When she was elected the first black district attorney of San Francisco? Or maybe when she was elected the first black attorney general of the state of California. Or maybe we missed it when we said she was the only black woman in the U.S. Senate, or the only black woman to run for vice president. Why play into this illusionary picture when we can deal with who the painter of the picture is? Donald Trump saw the NABJ as a useful platform for him to show that he will stand up to blacks and call us whatever he wants to call us and attack our people in their face, and they ain't gonna do anything about it. That's what he went to do, and that's what he did.
Claire.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Rev, although he's trying to get votes. And what I'm trying to figure out is, what votes did he think he was going to add to his MAGA base by doing what he did today? I can't imagine that he is so dumb that he thought he would add any black votes by talking about black jobs and saying what he said about the vice president. And maybe he is just trying to show the MAGA base that he would do this, but they know that already. They know he's one of, many of them agree with him about his less than view of people that don't look like them. So then the question is he trying to get us to talk about him? Is he so freaked out that he has not been dominating the airwaves for the last week that he was wanting to be so outrageous that we would sit here and talk about him today? So either he's really dumb, because what he did today, I don't think it gets him any more MAGA votes. He's got those votes.
Right.
Certainly doesn't get him any of the votes he doesn't have. Certainly doesn't get him any black votes. Or is he just that sick? You know, is he just that sick? And so, dumb or sick?
Yeah,
you got to pick one of the two.
I mean, I wrote down a lot of what you said, but you said we're covering him objectively. I mean, objectively speaking, this was a very unsteady performance. I mean, if the Republican Party was functioning and functional, you might imagine a functioning party would wonder if the person at the top of the ticket should be at the top of the ticket, if this was a person that was displaying adequate fitness. I mean, as someone who covered him and then saw this, how do you sort of just grade it performatively, even against a Trump curve?
Well, I'll say this. I don't know that as a reporter I can grade former President Trump. I think Republicans graded him when they nominated him again to be their nominee and to run for president. There was a primary. They saw him. They knew what he said. They knew what his past was. And they saw him and said he was going to be the face of the party. And we've watched over the years as the Republican Party has been made into the party of Trump. So I think they're going to decide whether or not this was something that was acceptable. There is some reporting that his team had agreed to an hour, and after 34 minutes, they said that this needed to end. There was a point, though, that he said that we were starting 30 minutes late, that NABJ and him, and then that NABJ wasn't starting on time. So maybe that factored into their decision. But it tells me that possibly they thought this wasn't going well, so they pulled him off the stage. But if I could, Nicole, I also want to read to you a statement that we just got from the Harris campaign, if you would allow me to, because I think it also just underscores sort of how they're seeing this moment. Is that okay for me to read that?
Of course.
So they write, the hostility, this is Michael Tyler, who is the communications director for the Harris campaign. The hostility Donald Trump showed on stage today is the same hostility he has shown throughout his life, throughout his term in office, and throughout his campaign for president as he seeks to regain power and inflict his harmful Project 2025 agenda on the American people. Trump lobbed personal attacks and insults at Black journalists the same way he did throughout his presidency, while he failed Black families and left the entire country digging out of the ditch he left us in. Donald Trump has already proven he cannot unite America, so he attempts to divide us. The statement goes on to say, today's tirade is simply a taste of the chaos and division that has been a hallmark of Trump's MAGA rallies and this entire campaign. It's also exactly what the American people will see from across the debate stage as Vice President Harris offers a vision of opportunity and freedom for all Americans. All Donald Trump needs to do is stop playing games and actually show up to the debate on September 10th. So that tells you where the Harris campaign is. They're calling him out, saying this is insulting, but they're also saying, you know what? And this, I think, goes back to what Vice President Harris said yesterday when she had a campaign rally in Atlanta with some 10,000 people there. She said, if you have something to say it to my face. So this is the campaign following up on that, saying, if you want to say something about my race or my policies or how I dealt with the border, say it to my face and show up on September 10th and debate me, Nicole.
Rev, let me ask you to follow up. I mean, say it to my face was where we were going to lead before this rolling train wreck sort of captured everyone's attention. And I'm sensitive as a person who sits in this chair to the decisions we make. And I think Claire's onto something, that Trump's insatiable desire for attention has been satisfied by the fact that we're talking about him. I do want to, I'm just, you know, we're at the data point in the cycle, right? And in terms of adding voters, he did come out today as anti-woman, anti-Black women, especially anti-press. The statements included anti-law enforcement tirades and anti, you know, any family that doesn't look like J.D. Vance's, basically, which would, I guess, speaking about the data, also include his. I want to play you, Rev, some of what he said about January 6th.
Sir, my question is on those.
What's going to happen to
my
the
question
people
is
that
on
tried
those
to
rioters who assaulted officers.
You have to
would you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You would pardon those?
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just well, they were convicted by a very a very tough system. They were
But,
people
sir, we're
that,
talking about
how
people
come
that
the
were
people,
seen
no,
beating
We're
officers
talking
with
about federal
flagpoles,
buildings.
dragging them down the stairs. They're on video. Have you seen that
Really?
video,
Oh,
sir?
really? Well, they
you would
shot-
pardon those. You would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was protesting. They shot her in the face. You know, nobody died that day.
Vladimir Putin, I think, had the exact same sentence structure in an interview with NBC's own Keir Simmons when he describes January 6th. Possibly a coincidence, maybe not. Your thoughts on Yamisha's reporting and that exchange?
I think that we must remember when you hear Donald Trump, his political experience was that he rose to national political capital and became the nominee on birtherism, denying that Barack Obama was an American, and in fact saying he was born in Kenya and that he would produce a birth certificate. That's how he started his political career. So for us to think that he does not think he can use a similar thing to Kamala Harris, we're acting like this is a guy that was in the Senate 15 years. He doesn't play by the same political kind of knowledge and strategy that one would play for votes. It worked for him with birtherism. He feels it'll work with him in terms of trying to make Kamala Harris appear to be less than what she says she is. Secondly, I think we must remember he's a guy that he has no idea what policy is. When you bring up DEI, he didn't ask the interviewer, how do you define DEI, because he wanted her to define it. He does not know how to define DEI. So he had to turn it back on her and kind of duck having to answer diversity, equity, and inclusion, because he's against DEI because it plays to his crowd. If you ask him what DEI was, if you ask him what his immigration policy is, he doesn't know. It's all bombast and performance. And that's why I say he went there today to perform. He did not go there as any former president or potential president calculating how I get votes. He didn't calculate how birtherism would work. It worked for him. And he's trying to find his birtherism rhythm this time. And he experimented. It's like an artist going on stage looking for the right song. He was experimenting. Maybe this is how you go after Kamala. So I love what Claire's saying. I love Claire. But if you're looking for a logical political strategy, Donald Trump and political strategy don't go in the same room.
I want to bring back NBC's John Allen, Brendan Buck, and Michael Hardaway. Here in studio with me is Julie Roginski, Democratic strategist, co-founder of Lift Our Voices. John, well, how does this fit in to what at least the campaign wanted it to be, which is outreach to black voters?
Well, I mean, sometimes things are billed that way, and it's not actually what appears to be what the campaign or the candidate actually wants. You heard Donald Trump walk in there and immediately start calling the moderator rude. He was setting up a combative atmosphere. Certainly, this could have gone a lot of ways. Anytime there's a reporter interviewing a president, a former president, a presidential candidate, there's some adversarial nature to that. Donald Trump certainly understands that. But he set this up as something that was not just adversarial, but combative. Then he went into things about Kamala Harris's background, saying he didn't know if she was black or Indian, accusing her of at one point claiming to be Indian and then becoming black, as if she couldn't have heritage from multiple parts of the world or multiple races.
You know what? Since you bring it up, John, and I'll let you continue, but we have that sound ready to go, so let's play it in case people didn't hear it the first time.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn, and she became a black person.
Just to be clear.
John, I'll let you continue there, but it was something that was commented on at the White House press briefing, that somehow Kamala Harris became a black person.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's obviously absurd and ridiculous and dumb and offensive. and all of the things that people will throw around at it. But this is what Donald Trump wanted out of today. He has got, he's playing to his base. He's trying to push up the energy and excitement from white males in the MAGA movement. He wanted this fight with black journalists. You saw that. He also wants to seize the news cycle. He has basically faded out of the news cycle over the past few weeks, particularly with the handoff on the Democratic side. And that's got to be frustrating him, somebody who's always been able to drive the news. So what does he do to get the news going again? He says something, obnoxious and controversial. So, he's getting what he wants right now. Viewers can hear what he said.
Yeah, he also, Michael, was asked to clarify his recent use of the term black jobs. Here's what he said.
I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
He also was asked, Michael, about whether the comments that have made that Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, and pressed on that. His answer was could be. Let me get your reaction to those statements.
This was insane. And the reality is that the NABJ should have anticipated that this would happen. His entire goal, to John's point, is to go in front of this audience of black people and insult them to play to his MAGA base on the right. It's horrifically insane. To that same group of people who are descendants of chattel slavery in America, he also said that his legal trials were the worst thing to happen in American history. And so this was a horrific situation that was completely preventable, and it's a very sad thing for the NABJ and for this country.
There's a lot else here, Julie, that we could talk about. I think John touched on this. He not only called the first questioner rude but disgraceful, complained about being treated in a horrible manner since, quoting him, "I love the black population." He was asked a number of times about his vice presidential pick, and talked about how he went to Yale and his personal story that many people know from his best-selling book. But when he was asked if J.D. Vance was ready on day one, his answer was, "I've always had a lot of respect for him," and then went into how historically the vice presidential pick really doesn't matter much. Given a chance to say J.D. Vance would be ready on day one, he didn't take it.
Well, Donald Trump is not interested in uplifting anybody who's not named Donald Trump, right? So J.D. Vance is whatever he is to Donald Trump. I guess a constitutional requirement he needs to fulfill, but he's never going to defend J.D. Vance because it's not about Donald Trump. It's not about J.D. Vance's grievances. It's about Donald Trump's grievances. Look, I will say, if you saw the way that he treated at least Rachel Scott on that stage, he speaks about women in a very particular way. They are nasty. They are rude. They are whatever they are. There's something that is worse than any man who ever speaks to him, right? And so you saw that misogyny come through over and over and over again. You're going to see that misogyny towards Kamala Harris. It's not enough that she's his opponent. She's a woman. She's a rude woman. She's an abrasive woman. Whatever she is, she's not worthy of him, especially because she's a black woman, or at least he now acknowledges she's a black woman. You saw that with those journalists today. I'm so sorry that they felt the need to basically be used so that he could appeal to his MAGA base, because that's exactly who he's appealing to. The white men out there who are racist, who support him, who think that the way that they get by is to treat women, and especially women of color, this way. This was not about the black people on the stage today. This was all about his white base, and it's a disgrace.
Brendan Buck, we only have 2 minutes left, but I want to give you some reaction from the Harris campaign that we're getting from one source familiar with the campaign's thinking. He is completely unhinged. This is also Trump. He cannot help himself. That person also reacted to Trump's comments, claiming that only recently Kamala Harris said she was black. And I'm quoting here. "It's simply a lie and easily disproved. She went to Howard, for Christ's sake. She's an AKA." And then that person added, "This is painful." Your reaction to what you heard from Donald Trump?
Well, I think the Harris campaign should be very glad that the NABJ platformed Donald Trump today. I mean, this is exactly what Democrats have long said. But once you see Donald Trump again and you're reminded of who he is, you're going to be disgusted by him. And this was, I think, the beginning of that. Jonathan may be right that, there is some value in the Trump base for doing this. But let's not forget, Donald Trump and his campaign claimed they were going to go out and get historic levels of black votes in this election. That dramatically changed, obviously, when Kamala Harris took top of the ticket. The energy that you are seeing in the Democratic electorate right now is through the roof. And I think if that door was starting to close, I think it fully closed today. The Harris campaign should be ecstatic to show this video. The language that he used, the tone that he took, it would not have been hard to just take the high ground on that first question. It was a tough question, but just take the high ground, smile, and try to demonstrate that he can reach a new section of voters. He clearly had an issue that he thinks works. He kept talking about immigration, and I think their polling has showed that black men don't like the situation with immigration. But you can't walk back all of those other things that he just did and said there. And if this is what he's going to be like when he's pressed on questions and when race is front and center in this campaign, like it apparently is going to be, based on their own choice, I think that a lot of this is going to backfire, and those hopes of a lot of black votes are going to be going away pretty quickly.
What we also saw may be a reason why Kamala Harris delightedly challenged him once again to a debate just last night. Brendan Buck, Michael Hardaway, Julie Roginski, thank you all very much.
As my friend Quavo would say, he does not walk it like he talks it.
Kamala Harris quoting Atlanta artist Quavo at her Atlanta rally last night. He was also there endorsing her, campaigning for her and speaking, as well as another chart-topping rapper, Megan Thee Stallion, performing with her dancers clad in Democratic blue. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor flagged how at that rally, you can see here the swaying, thousands were swag surfing. That's a popular swaying dance. Again, this is culture mixed with politics. It is organic. That was not organized by the campaign. The crowd spanned generations and races, noted a Slate reporter who was there, with attendees describing the rally as fun and invigorating, words that haven't been associated with the Democratic Party much lately. Now, organizing in politics can be fun. It's actually kind of a strange part of the Trump era, if you think about it, that so often the right has seemed at times more upbeat than the left, and even the younger left, which has plenty of energy but might not just be present in our politics. The right has dug into grievance. Last night's rally, though, tapped into something else, an energy inviting people into Harris's nascent campaign.
Kamala Harris in a key battleground, of course, Georgia tonight.
We'll see a performance from the rapper Megan Thee Stallion.
Megan Thee Stallion, a huge artist who's performed with Beyonce out of Texas.
We're about to make history with the first female president.
Rapper Quavo will take the stage.
In the birthplace of the culture, it's also the same place to launch the first African-American woman to run for president.
Please give it up for Quavo.
The birthplace of culture. Culture, also the name of Quavo's group Migos' first album, and their second one, Culture 2. For the culture is something you hear a lot in Atlanta and around the whole country when we talk about celebrating what Americans have created and shared. And yes, culture can be for everyone. The idea here is that culture will help reinforce and fortify Harris's politics. This kind of campaigning is a contrast to what Trump is offering. Even when he claims to care about minority issues, like today's widely panned and controversial remarks at the Black Journalist Conference, Kamala Harris's allies note the approach is also matched by a track record. She was in Atlanta earlier this year, not to campaign, not to get a promotion, but to push gun safety laws with Quavo, who spoke movingly about his nephew and bandmate's tragic death at the hands of gun violence. That was an issue he invoked again last night. If you hear anyone saying, oh, this was just music or, quote unquote, just fun, well, no, they mixed that in too, and it was there if you were listening. A lot of people in Atlanta and around the country care about gun safety laws. Harris also hosted another Atlanta artist, Lil Baby, at the White House years back to draw attention to police brutality efforts. So there is style and substance here for those who can see it. These are stories of history and the future here for those opening to learning about all these connections. Just as other generations had Dylan and Joplin and Woodstock, well, today it's Megan, Beyonce, and Kendrick. Democrats have actually been using Kendrick's anthem, which came out this year, Not Like Us, to skew MAGA as weird. And when that song was actually played last night at the rally, many attendees were visibly pumped. You can see one here holding a Harris sign and getting down in the blue, rapping along, wop, wop, wop. I'm going to do my stuff. Now, this was captured on the PBS channel coverage, and it literally went viral, as they say, in real time. One person posting my boy on the PBS news stream was going crazy. Another adding, you can't buy enthusiasm like this. Kamala's on a rocket to the moon. Now, that video has over 7 million views already in under a day. It's joining these other Kamala memes. Here's how one person, a heat map news writer, put it, Matthew Zeitling, quote, every day, a new John Ossoff is born. Do you see the resemblance? Well, it's up to the people to decide. This is energy times culture, amplified at the speed of today's internet, which, by the way, quickly identified the dancing, enthusiastic Harris fan you see there. Turns out he's exactly the kind that young activists want to be enthused, that Democrats are engaged with. His name is actually Parker Short. He's president already of Georgia Young Democrats, and he's been out and about working in the trenches with candidates long before his accidental star turn dancing at the Harris rally. And as Parker Short was the star of this viral day, as mentioned, that video got 7 million views already and growing. You are the president of Georgia Young Democrats, and we saw the dance moves at the rally last night. Thanks for coming on the beat tonight.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's always an honor to get to talk about how important this election is and how we need to organize the youth, and everything is at stake this year.
Yeah, well, a lot of people I think watching are interested in what young people are thinking. You've been very involved. We've got the photos of you with some of the other officials as well as last night. Before we get into everything serious, let's just start with you're enjoying the rally. You clearly like that Kendrick song. When did you then start finding out that you went viral? Because this wasn't like you making your own video. This is like other people put this out.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because it was the PBS NewsHour stream, and I watch NewsHour pretty regularly. So everyone was texting me, Parker. But, I'm actually lucky to be a DNC delegate for Kamala Harris, and I'm so excited to vote for her. And our group chats were blowing up of all the Georgia Dems, and a couple of my friends were on the other side, and they're they just kept smiling at me. But the truth is, I had the energy, and I'm excited, and young people have the energy because we're excited to win this election.
Yeah,
we're going to win.
So take us again further into the vibe at the rally. This energy, what people are watching, what's happening out there. We've got the surf swag as well, because it seems to be diverse, young and old, different groups, different identities. Mm-hmm. One thing we were talking about last night, Brittany Cooper, a guest here, made the point. Everyone's invited. This is for everyone. Someone who says, oh, I don't know that exact song or I don't know that move. The vibe seems to be, well, come on in and try it out. Not that it's some inside thing you're not welcome to. Did it feel like that last night?
Well, you know what? That's what the Democratic Party is. We're a big tent, and we're here to let people in and lift people up. I got involved in Democratic politics because I lost my dad as a little kid. I saw the impact that Democratic politics can have for people. I was on Social Security. His labor union, helped save my family from hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt. Brian Kemp refuses to expand Medicaid in Georgia, and when he changed Medicaid standards, I lost my health care. So this is very real for me. And everybody in that room, everybody in this movement knows that we're in it together. And we're in it together to win because there's so much at stake, no matter what music you like or what dance moves we all want our kids to have a better future. And that's why I'm here. And I will say, before I started singing Not Like Us, I had the same energy for Brick House and some Ludacris songs. I was enjoying myself all night. The energy was electric because we're excited.
Parker, as you may know, Ludacris was all about grassroots organizing. The album Word of Mouth, right, is how you get the word out.